We're only a year from the 2024 election, and there are still sitting members of the House of Representatives who refuse to just say, Donald Trump lost in 2020. It's that simple. Joe Biden won. Here is Republican Congressman Steve Scalise on ABC's This Week with George Stephanopoulos. George Stephanopoulos asks six times, can you just confirm the 2020 election wasn't stolen? The guy who won is the president. 6 times Steve Scalise refuses to do it. This is where we are in almost 2024.
Right now. Can you say unequivocally that the 2020 election was not stolen?
First time.
Well, what I've told you is there are states that didn't follow their laws. That is what the state constitution, the U.S. Constitution requires.
Now, let's just preempt that. This is a cop-out. They love to say states didn't follow their own laws. And what they mean by that is that mail-in voting was allowed despite not having the legislature vote on it. However, this is not against the law. In situations of public health emergency, you can circumvent that process in order to allow vote by mail. You can argue it's unfair. You can argue it's wrong. You can say you don't like it. But it is not true that they didn't follow the law. They did follow the law. There was a public health emergency. You can say it shouldn't have been an emergency till your head is blue. I don't know. But it doesn't change the fact that everything that the states did was legal. So he's been asked once to say it wasn't stolen. He refuses to do it. Let's continue.
I've seen in my own state where we had to send our elections commissioner to jail years ago for fraud and corruption, and we cleaned up our act.
And remember, that has nothing to do with the 2020 election.
In our state, every state ought to follow the laws that are on their books. That's what the U.S. Constitution says. That's not what I asked. I said, can you say unequivocally that the 2020 election was not stolen?
Second time.
Look, Joe Biden's president. I know you and others want to talk about.
All right. That's the second cop-out. Was the election stolen? I don't deny that Joe Biden is the president. Wasn't what I asked you. So 2 attempts, 2 cop-outs. Keep going.
2020, we're focused on the future. We've talked about 2020 a lot. We're talking about how to get our country back on track, how to get our economy moving, how to stand up to the bad actors around the world. Xi is not slowing down in China.
He was asked about the 2020 election. He's talking about China.
At Taiwan, you see what's going on in Russia. You see what Iran is doing to work with Hamas and other terrorist organizations. This administration needs to pick up the pace. They're not standing up to the bad actors around the world. They need to. We're passing bills to address this through the House. The Senate needs to take action. The president needs to take action as well. That's what
Congressman,
we're focused on in the House.
I know that Joe Biden is president. I'm asking you a different question. Can you
Third
say
time.
unequivocally that the 2020 election was not stolen?
Third time.
What I've told you, and you've seen this, there are states that didn't follow the laws that are on their books, which is what the U.S. Constitution says they have to do.
So you just refuse to say unequivocally that the 2020 election was not stolen?
Fourth time.
So you want to keep rehashing 2020? We're talking.
I just want an answer to the question, yes or no.
Threats to this country. We've talked about this.
That was the 5th attempt.
Before, but again, will you acknowledge that there were states that didn't follow the actual state legislative enacted laws on their books, which the U.S. Constitution says they're supposed to do?
I know that every court that looked at whether the election was stolen said it wasn't, rejected those claims. And I asked you a very, very simple question. Now I've asked it, I think, the 5th time that you can't appear to answer. Can you say unequivocally that the 2020 election was not stolen?
I told you there were a handful of states that didn't follow their laws. The rest did. The rest followed.
6 times. 6 times. 4 of the times, or I guess 5, he says some states didn't follow the laws. That claim was rejected by the Supreme Court. That got to the Supreme Court. It went up to the Supreme Court. Oh, we believe that what states did was legal. Turns out it wasn't. Turns out that what they did was perfectly in accordance with how they are allowed to manage elections in the state of a public health emergency. And then once answers by saying, Joe Biden is the president. Thanks, Steve. We knew that. You can just say you don't like the results, right? I mean, just say you don't like the results, but it wasn't stolen. I think Biden's terrible, but it wasn't stolen. They're not willing to do it. And that is an extraordinary example of that obfuscation. Budgeting can be a tough thing for a lot of people to stay disciplined about, but our sponsor Cube makes it much easier. The Cube app lets you easily separate your budget into categories called cubes, and then make all of your purchases from your Cubes with your Cube debit card. Let's say you've budgeted $1,000 a month for groceries. You're at the grocery store, you're ready to spend, say, $250. You choose the grocery Cube in the app. That'll make the money available on the card. As soon as you process the card, your grocery Cube will then show the remaining balance of $750. And the card can't be used until you greenlight the purchase, which prevents theft. You can always see how much you have left in each Cube. You can avoid overspending. Cube has joint accounts and debit cards for kids, so you can plan and save together. Your kids can make purchases that you've authorized in advance without borrowing your credit card. The average Cube user saves $440 a month just from being more conscious and aware of their spending. You can try the Cube Premium or Family Plan completely free for 2 months at davidpakman.com/money. The link is down below.